I have the honor of introducing our speaker to you this morning. Martha Zoller is the State Policy Director for the Office of Senator David Perdue. She joined the official team in January. In September 2014, Martha left a 20-year media career to join the campaign of David Perdue as Senior Policy Advisor. Until 2014, Zoller hosted radio programs in Georgia and was named to the Talker's Top 100 radio shows in America multiple times. She was a regular contributor on cable and broadcast news during that time, and was also a longtime panelist on Fox 5 Atlanta's The Georgia Gang from 2000 to 2010. Zoller attended JCOC 69 and traveled to Iraq in 2005 and 2007 to cover the GWOT. Martha ran for Congress in 2012 and made it to the runoff. In 2013, launched zpolitics.com as editor-in-chief and hosted Georgia's morning news for the Georgia News Network. She lives in Gainesville with her husband, Dr. Lynn Zoller, and has 4 grown children and 3 grandchildren. Martha attends Gainesville First United Methodist Church. Please give her a warm welcome, Ms. Martha Zoller.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me today. And, I have 1 more grandchild on the way in March, too, so that will change your life, folks. And, Senator Perdue, I want to tell you a little bit about Senator Perdue before we get into the tax plan, and then also want to introduce Colin Kelly. Wave your hand there, Colin. Colin is our field rep here. We saw the growth that's happening in Dublin and in the area around here, and so we just carved out a new field rep district and brought Colin down here just around December 1st. So we want you to be better served. We did set the office up where we have 1 what's called brick and mortar office in Atlanta, but we have 10 field reps around the state. And the idea is that we're going to come to you. If you have something, you're going to contact us. You'll go to purdue.senate.gov. You can hover over that state map and you can see who your person is. You can call that person. You can set up an appointment. They're going to come to you, and hopefully what's going to happen is not only they're going to meet you, but they're going to meet people you work with. They might meet other members of your family, and I like to call that putting the rock in the water and seeing the ripples go out, and that we can have more of an impact with folks with this particular structure. We still obviously will do appointments with folks, and folks come into our Atlanta office all the time. They're kind of in 3 categories. I call them the check the box folks. We see those people this time of the year where they just have to report back to whoever they work with that they met with their congressman or their senator, and those are lovely folks, and we see them every year, and we develop relationships with them, and it's a lot of fun. You also have people that are, I'm 58 years old, that are my age and older and still want to sit down with somebody. They want to sit down with somebody, they want to look them in the eye, and they want to have a meeting. And that's not just older people, but it's mostly older people. And I consider myself in that category. And then you have the people that are never going to be happy. And that's kind of where I come in. Generally, when I meet with somebody, a lot of times when I meet with somebody, they've been through a couple of people they're not happy with. And it is a customer service kind of thing, because I can't change Senator Perdue's position on things. We have a robust discussion about issues, but once Senator Perdue makes his mind up about what he's going to do, then we support his positions, and those are the positions that we have. But what we want people to do, because everybody in this room doesn't agree on things, much less everybody across the state of 11 million people don't agree on things. And what we want folks, if they've come to the point where they want to meet with us, then we want them to feel heard, we want them to feel respected and validated, and then usually we'll come out with a kernel or 2 of things that we can take up and maybe tweak something. And be a part of something. So I love that part of my job. It is really because I get to meet really interesting, different people that have different points of view across the spectrum. I would argue that, one of the best things about my job is that I get to, unlike a lot of people who are just in their own zone and they only talk to people they agree with all the time, I get to talk to people all across the spectrum that have all different points of view, from the right to the left and everything in between, and I love that. So it's been a lot of fun. I joined Senator Perdue in the what I call the 4th quarter, since we talked about the Patriots earlier, the 4th quarter of his campaign. My brother had died suddenly, and it was a really terrible week for me. I got that 2 a.m. call that nobody ever wants to get, and it was a bad week. And within that week, Senator Perdue called me, then David Perdue called me to tell me he was sorry about what had happened. He had known how close I was to my brother, and he said, I know this is a really bad week for you, but I really need your help. I need your help with women in coalitions, and I'd love for you to come on board. And so I told him I wanted to think about it, and I decided, I don't know, we don't know how, none of us know how long we have. And when the Lord opens up a door, then maybe you ought to go through it. And that's been my motto throughout my life, is that, some people joke and say maybe I couldn't keep a job, but I have gone through the open doors, and I have had a rich and wonderful experience throughout my life to be able to do that. And I'm really proud to serve David Perdue, who is a good man who is trying to do the right thing in a very difficult situation. But what you all asked me to talk to you about today was tax reform, okay? And I was watching the news this morning, and it caught my ear because I wasn't really watching, so I was getting ready to come here, and I heard Gainesville, Georgia, which is where I'm from. So that got my attention. It turned out there was a company from Gainesville, Georgia, Mincy Marble, that was on TV talking about bonuses they were going to be given to their employees and expansion they were going to do as a result of the tax plan. And Mincy Marble is a great company, but it's a smaller company. It's not like AT&T or Apple or any of that kind of stuff. Because I think that the one thing I want you to kind of think about as I'm talking about the tax plan is all of the companies, and there's more than 3,000 of them that have announced that they're going to give bonuses to employees as a result of savings they're going to get from the tax reform. And there are some folks that say, well, this only amounts to about 3% of what the tax reform is. I would say, yes, that's true, but at the same time, this is before any of that tax savings has been realized. Before any of that tax savings has been realized, 3,000 companies have stepped forward and said, we've looked at 3,000 or more companies, we've looked at this, and we're going to start giving some money back. And I think that's a good business decision, quite frankly. You don't want to spend all the money you think you're going to get before you get it, but it's a good faith effort to be able to put forth, okay, we know we're going to be getting some tax savings, we're going to pass some of this on to you now, and then we're going to be able to spread some of it out. For example, Walmart not only gave, I think, some bonuses, but they also raised their hourly wage, which that is going to be spread out over time as they're realizing these tax benefits. So the Wednesday before Christmas, it's kind of like the night before Christmas, but it was the Wednesday before Christmas, and they finally voted on H.R. 1, which is the Tax Cuts and Job bill. And that did overall cut the U.S. corporate rate down to about 21%, and it also transitioned the U.S. into a more simplified tax system. And I think that that's what's important about this. I think it's fair to say that there has been more gains of tax benefits on the corporate side than on the individual side, but there's also great gains on the individual side and the side of simplification, as well as in the area of lower taxes. And the simplification comes from the fact that the standard deduction is doubled for most people. So on average, folks were filing itemized taxes. About 30% of taxpayers were filing itemized taxes, and they expect that roughly about 10% will file itemized taxes now, because that doubling of or almost doubling of the standard deduction will actually incorporate most of that, which will make it easier for folks to file taxes. And I don't know about you, my husband's a primary care physician, and we have a couple of other small businesses on his side of the ledger, if you will, and our tax return looks like a book. I mean, it's like this thick. We've got to do all kinds of things all throughout the year. We pay an accountant a whole lot of money to be able to keep track of it. We've got, somebody that helps us keep the record straight. So it's an expensive endeavor for a small business to be able to keep up with all the tax laws as they are right now. And what our goal was in the new tax reform bill was to simplify that. And I think in the short term, what we've seen is people responding to it in a positive way, and I think in the long term, we will see that too. For individuals, and I don't want to go through a whole laundry list here, but I'm going to give you as many of the high points as we can, and then we'll talk about, and then I'll stay after to answer any questions, because I know how y'all are in these morning meetings. Y'all have to go to work, so we want to make sure that we don't keep you over on any of that. But the individual tax rates have been lowered across the board, and they've added a few tax rates in that, and they start at 10% and go to 37%. As I mentioned before, the standard deduction has been doubled. And then there's a new family credit, which includes a child tax credit from $1,000 to $2,000 for each child, and providing new credits of $500 for each of their dependents. As I mentioned, I have grandchildren, and my kids, I cannot believe what my kids are paying for childcare. And you know, it is amazing to me how much good childcare costs. And I know it's different in different parts of the country, but it's a much more expensive than when I was raising my children. They're also preserving the adoption tax credit. They're preserving the deduction for charitable contributions. Also, they preserve the deduction, and this is important, for medical expenses. And that was very important in our senior community. We heard a lot from those folks that, especially in that community where that deduction was very important. It preserved the home mortgage interest deduction for existing mortgages, and maintains the home mortgage interest deduction for newly purchased homes up to $750,000. And really, that was another thing that was important to protect in there, because, you know, if you think about it, and again, it's the mortgage amount, it's not the price of the house, right? It's if your mortgage is $750,000 or less, that has been preserved. That tax credit has been preserved. For businesses, it's going to lower the corporate rate from 35% to 21%. They were able to get that effective immediately. So it was effective on the 1st of January. That was a negotiating point, because some folks wanted to say, let's do that in 2019, let's do the individual in 2018. They were able to get it all in 2018. And it provides a deduction of 20% for qualified pass-through income, which I think is really important for small businesses. And that is really where about 80% of the jobs in America come from, is from small businesses. So I think it's going to be positive there. It also is an important process to be able to simplify the overall tax code. And what I have seen, actually, as I've looked at it and looked at examples, and I've worked a lot of different examples on this, and it is a positive thing for people. And I know I'm saying positive a lot, but it is. People are going to start with their next paycheck. They're going to see more money in their paycheck. They're also going to see their companies have more money for investment. And I think you've seen, whether it's $1,000, whether it's $500, whether it's $2,500 in the case of Apple and other places, that companies are stepping up and they're saying, okay, we in good faith are going to give some money to our employees. And I think it encourages people across the board. I mean, like I said, my husband has small businesses, and we have employees, and we are looking at, how can we do more for our employees and also make a little more money ourselves? I mean, it is a game where everybody wins, and I think that's what we tried to accomplish here, so that we can rise. A rising tide lifts all boats. A couple of other points about this, and I made this before, but I think it's important to reiterate, is that roughly 30% of folks were itemizing their tax returns. We think that's going to be about 10%. Now, granted, I don't know if we have any accountants in the room. I know your life has been very hectic, let's say, in the last 5 weeks, okay? Because I know every time I try to call my accountant, it is not unusual for him to say, or for somebody to tell me he's in a meeting learning about the new tax code. So I think that it is a challenge when we do things the way we do it, and I'm going to get to that in just a moment, because it's something very close to Senator Perdue's heart. But also what we're seeing is optimism in the corporate world. We're seeing relief for the middle class, and we're going to be more competitive worldwide, and that's really what we want to do. We have the biggest market in the world. We want to see that go both ways, and I think you saw the president comment about that in Davos last week, where he talked about America first does not mean America alone, but we want to have deals that are as good for us as they are for the people we're making deals with. But I want to kind of close with just a little bit of a discussion of the budget. We are coming up on another deadline on February the 8th, and Senator Perdue has, from the beginning, from campaigning all the way through, as recently as his last interview, has talked about the problem with the budget. Senator Perdue got together a group of senators to talk about how to redo how we do budgets, and it was Democrats and Republicans. They looked at best practices of states, companies, and countries to say, how can we do the budget process better? And I may have the numbers just 1 year off or not, but roughly in the last 44 years, I think there's only been 2 times where we've passed the budget on time. We've had roughly 198 continuing resolutions during that period of time. There was some law changes related to government shutdowns prior to Graham-Redmond. They didn't have government shutdowns. They had government shutdowns, but they didn't actually shut down the government because they knew they were going to come up with an agreement. Since then, they actually shut the government down, and there's been a number of those also. But Senator Perdue is working very hard with Democrats and Republicans to come to the table and find out a better way to pass the budget. The House did pass all the budget bills on time. The Senate did not. And it's really a broken system that has to be fixed, and that's something that Senator Perdue is working across the board, across the aisle on. I think it's the most important thing, because when I talk about the people that come into our office, it's really hard to talk to people about whether a program is going to be extended or something like that when we're going from continuing resolution to continuing resolution. I mean, it's difficult for the military to plan when we're doing that. I will tell you, the only good thing about something like that is it does protect funding levels at the same level they were, but it doesn't really take into consideration changes if you have a continuing resolution. So we have another one coming up, but the way it should work is the president makes the State of the Union address. Somewhere around the first week of February or so, he drops his budget, he or she drops his budget. Then we have the Senate and the House pass a framework by April 15th, our favorite day of the year, right? April 15th. And then all the bills passed and signed into law by the 30th of September. We've only done that twice in 44 years, and that's just not acceptable. So that's something that Senator Perdue is working on very closely. As I said before, he's working across the aisle doing that. He is very proud of what has been accomplished in the last 3 years. He also has been very much at the forefront of the discussion. There are many meetings that he has been involved in where he has been the most junior senator in the meeting. And so he has brought, because he's the only Fortune 500 executive, former Fortune 500 executive in the Congress, people come to him and ask him for his opinion. And so I think that has helped Georgia, and that has also helped the country to have somebody like that in this seat. I am honored to work for him because he really does care about people, and he gets involved with folks. Now, he is an engineer, and I love that about him because he loves charts and graphs. If you come to him with a chart and a graph, he is going to be really happy about it because he likes to look at the data. But he's really a terrific person to work for, and I'm just proud to be able to be a part of his team. Now, just quickly about the office. As I mentioned, Colin Kelly is the field rep in this area. We are happy to help you with any issues that you have related to federal agencies. And sometimes we can help you before you have to get a lawyer involved. And a lot of people don't know that. So if you have a problem with Social Security, the biggest ones are VA, Social Security, and visa type issues. And we get amazing number of calls at the end of the year. I'm about to go on vacation and I can't find my passport. But we can even help you with that too. So I would encourage you that if you have a problem with a federal agency, to please give our office a call. Colin does casework also, and please give our office a call and they can be involved in helping you do things. And we'll tell you if we can't help you, but I would rather tell you we can't help you than have you go somewhere else when we could have helped you. And I will close with just a little story. Colin just recently closed a case for me. I was trying to get my dad's records from World War II. He was a POW in World War II, and they were caught up in this big fire they had in the early 50s. And so Colin was able to put in a request, and just a couple of days ago, I was able to get copies of my dad's records and copies of his medals. And it was a very poignant moment for me that they had his last pay stub in there and his signature on there. And I probably hadn't seen my dad's signature since he died, 20 years ago. And so We can do things like that for families, but we also can help with all kinds of other issues. Like I said, I will be hanging around for questions afterwards, and I will be happy to take any of those at the end of the program. Thank you so much for having me.